Mario Vitanzi here with the gorgeous, incredibly handsome Patrick. Oh, where are you? There you are, Patrick Chiotti. My
Mm.
camera's flipped, so I don't know where I'm pointing. Welcome to Altitude Adjustment. Sorry that we are not live. Unfortunately, I have a life outside of the show. I know you, Patrick, and a lot of other people don't want to believe that, but I actually have a very important job outside of this. But not to worry because we will still bring you the best content ever. It just happens that it's not live. We're going to talk about Brandon McManus, a couple of projections for your team, and maybe something that Patrick and I disagree on.
Mm.
Stay tuned.
Hey, feel I'm in the mood for a switch up. I hit the function, hit the rose till I hiccup. I hit the stage and leave with money that's a stick up.
First and foremost, make sure you follow us on Twitter at Patrick Chiotti, at Vitanzi Therapy, or don't. We don't really care. But if you do, then you can kind of like interact with us and kind of see what we're all about. And you would have maybe like a preview to the show that we are doing today. Like, as you know, Pat, it's a downtime right now. There's nothing really happening that we haven't covered ad nauseum. There's
Mm.
nothing going on that we haven't talked about and talked about better than anybody else has talked about. So we've set the bar extremely high, and we're still going to bring good content, even if it doesn't involve the Denver Broncos. So we're just going to jump right into this, Pat. As I'm sure you are aware, there is some stuff going down with a former Denver Broncos kicker, one Brandon McManus. So I'm going to
Mm.
read you both of the statements that have been released. You know, this all came out recently. I think yesterday the news broke. So the first excerpt is going to be from Tony Busby, who is representing the two women here in question. Quote, for those who have inquired, the Busby law firm is lead counsel for the two women who brought this case. We filed the case on Friday, but before that filing we attempted without success to resolve this matter without the need for litigation. Our efforts at resolution were met with arrogance, ignorance, and stupidity, strikingly similar to how the Deshaun Watson team responded when we tried to resolve those cases pre-filing. The allegations made in this lawsuit are very serious. We made sure to fully vet them and speak to witnesses before even taking the cases. We will pursue this case with the same tenacity we are known for. It's a shame this type of conduct still occurs. It happens far too often. These women were simply trying to do their jobs. Then it says, if you are a victim or have knowledge of the claims we have made, please contact us. That dropped yesterday. Now, a
Mm.
little bit ago, Brandon McManus's attorney, Brett Galloway, responded with, quote, these are absolutely fictitious and demonstrably false allegations made as part of a campaign to defame and disparage a talented and well respected NFL player. We intend to aggressively defend Brandon's rights and integrity and clear his name by showing that these claims are truly an extortion attempt.
Mm.
End quote. Pat,
Mm. 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 Mm.
that's a lot. Thoughts?
Mm. Um, well, without knowing extreme details about what happened and with it being an ongoing case, I think it's safe to say that, I just hope that it gets resolved in the right way with, due process and due justice. My initial thought when I saw this was, wow, holy crap. Another NFL player being accused of sexually assaulting women, and like this being like on their way to London on the flight, I guess is what it was. Man, it's just not a good look. And I really hope that, all athletes and especially the younger athletes understand that just because you are a professional athlete, you're a multimillionaire, Super Bowl winner, whatever it is, that does not mean that you are just free reign out there and can do whatever you want and talk to people however you want to, especially when it comes to women and their bodies and sexualizing them. I know that there's the stigma of professional athletes and they travel everywhere. They've got girls in every city. We hear that all the time. But man, this is a guy that's married. He's got kids. Like, why are you even putting yourself in a position to even be accused of this stuff? Like, this is just absolutely abhorrent. Have we learned nothing? Like, we saw all the things that happened with Deshaun Watson, and I remember you and I talking about this to an extent A lot of people were saying, "Oh, well, he's a professional athlete. He's a quarterback. He's got to have a massage therapist in every city that he goes to. It doesn't matter." That's really not the case. And you were the one to tell me that. Like, no, that's that's ridiculous. So like, don't put yourself in these positions, guys. Especially if you're married and you have children at home. Imagine like what this is going to look like in a few years when your kids are old enough to Google your name, and the first thing that comes up is, "Oh, my dad was accused of sexually assaulting two women on a flight to London when he left my mom at home with me." Like, that's ridiculous. Stop putting yourself in these positions, man. You're a grown man. Figure it out. Think about your life. Think about your wife, and think about your kids. Think about your legacy. Everything is on Google these days. Everything. They can find literally anything. They can find a video of you riding drunk downtown in Denver on a scooter. They can find articles about you sexually assaulting women. Like, they can find everything. Keep your nose clean. Keep your fucking nose clean. For God's sakes, just stop putting yourself in this position. It's ridiculous.
It's infuriating, man. This is one of my biggest pet peeves. We've seen it out of Kansas City repeatedly, especially this year. I mean, not that it's exclusive to them, but they seem to have a chronic problem. It feels like their facility is on an Indian burial ground site, and then like all
Native American.
these terrible things keep happening. Anyway, I just wanted to throw shade at the Chiefs any
Why is
chance I
it
get. No,
why is
you're
it the
absolutely right.
kickers?
Like we have to.
Why are the kickers all of a sudden thinking that they need to do shit like this? Like, we got Harrison Butker out here telling women to stay in the kitchen. Meanwhile, all he does is kick a fucking football. Like, and then Brandon McManus is thinking he's like Big Daddy Kane with a fucking pimp cane on a flight to London and wants to, essay a couple of flight attendants. Like, what is going on with these kickers? Y'all are kickers. But like, you got
Stay
one
out of the
job and
news.
just be good at it. Like, that's all you got to do, bro.
Yeah,
Please.
they have one thing to do, like, let's all calm down. But yeah, obviously you have to go through the due process, and it was kind of the same thing with the Deshaun Watson case of like, let let the process take hold, allow things to come out, let the lawyers and the litigators and everybody do their job. But it's bad optics, right?
Yeah.
Even if everything
Yeah.
is cleared, which it doesn't feel like it's going to be, because what the Busby law firm is saying is they tried to squash this. So the
Yeah.
response from Brandon McManus's attorney almost kind of spits in the face of that response, where they had openly said, like, we tried to make sure that this didn't go to court. We didn't want this to become a thing. We tried to
Mhm.
settle it. It didn't happen. And they knowingly allowed this to become public, right?
Yeah.
And you would think that that would bode well for McManus, maybe because they're so hell bent on saying that this didn't happen. But man,
Mhm.
going through this whole process, like, I don't think that things are coming out of thin air. Like, clearly something happened. And
Well,
if the
and it's
Busby law firm is saying that they have witnesses and they went through due
yeah.
process, like, this feels like it could be very messy for Brandon McManus, who just signed a contract with the Washington Commanders. I think it's safe to say that he's probably not going to be their starting kicker by the time the season rolls around. But again,
Yeah.
we
It's
have to have the difficult job of withholding judgment before all of the information comes out, but it doesn't look good.
it's important to note too that it's not just McManus that's getting sued. It's the Jaguars. This is an organizational lawsuit. Like, and that kind of leads me to believe that maybe this happened on a team plane. Maybe these people were hired by the team to work on the flight to London. Like, this is not good. It's not good that McManus is getting sued. It's not good that the team is getting sued. Like, this is going to be really messy. I hope it all gets resolved with the correct parties getting their due judgment. But yeah, man, it's just like, this is not a good look. And if we could take anything, let's look at what McManus's wife posted on Instagram. She was taking out the trash, taking it to the curb. What does that have to say about the situation? Like,
And
she
now
would know better
here's the
than
thing, like,
anybody.
there's it's and that's open ended, right? Like,
Yeah,
maybe that was representative of the women who were accusing. We don't really know. There was no context, but yeah, you're right. On her
yeah,
Instagram feed, on her story, she posted a story of just her taking out the trash. That's
taking out the
really
trash.
open ended. Like, it could mean Brandon, or it could be these women that are trying to defame him. Again, withhold your judgment for now, but it's our
Mhm.
job to kind of speak on this and give you our opinion. And
Yeah,
withholding judgment on my end, all I'm going to say is it looks really, really bad for Brandon McManus and his camp. And time will tell what happens. Speaking of special teams, Nice little transition there. You like that?
Nice.
I put on Twitter asking if anybody had any questions for us that they would like answered in this down period of the off season. And our very own Frankie from LTB wanted to know what, if any, players on this roster right now could benefit from the new special teams rules. Now, we did speak about this with Ryan Edwards last week. So if you're
Mhm.
watching this, you're interested to know Ryan's thoughts and our thoughts on this. Make sure you go back last week. It was a phenomenal show. But yeah, I mean, we having discussed this, it's hard to say right now because really these rules are convoluted. They're trying to get rid of touchbacks, and kickers and teams are going to be punished for touching the ball back in the end zone. They want more returns and they want safer returns. So I think
Yeah.
I was shocked, Pat, that this even became a rule without them trying it out in the preseason first. That's typically what we'll see. It's like you give it a trial run in the preseason. If it feels like it's going to work, then you implement it, and then teams kind of have a time to transition. This was a big change very immediately. And to me, it just strikes me as a way to make another part of the game that's usually pretty boring. It's like, I know we have kick returns for touchdowns, but they're very, very few and far between, especially now that they're looking to change that. So, I mean, just off the top of my head, if I had to give you someone that I think would benefit from this, like specifically, the first name that pops in mind is Jaleel McLaughlin. This is a guy that we had
Mhm.
said that might be on the outside looking in after the team drafted Audric Estime and signed Blake Watson as an undrafted free agent. McLaughlin, even though he has that burst and he kind of has that game breaking speed, not a good pass blocker, not a good
Right.
run blocker, not
Right.
necessarily a guy that you can trust on third down. And so, what does a guy like that have to do to make the roster to carve out a spot? It's probably on special teams. Now, he's too small and slender to be a gunner. I don't think he's going to be making any tackles. And so, this is the kind of position that lends itself to guys like Jaleel McLaughlin. And we saw it in this year's draft, Pat, that a lot of running backs who were actually of like higher stature and rated higher than a lot of the guys that got drafted, we
Mhm.
think it's a result of the new kickoff rules. You're likely going to have two return men back there, and you need somebody explosive. You need someone that can cut on a dime and has, that quick twitch acceleration. Jaleel McLaughlin strikes me as that guy. And so this is the kind of situation where McLaughlin might have to carve out a role on kick return if he wants a spot on the 53-man roster. So that was the first name that came to mind for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Jaleel McLaughlin, Marvin Mims still, even though he's kind of slated to be that starting wide receiver, I still think that this is a great rule change for him. And to your point about, you know, trying out the new format. I mean, they honestly, like, all the stuff that they did in the XFL was probably more than enough to see that this was a viable thing. And this was something that was worked on for years. The concept of it was, thoroughly built. And then when they tested it with the XFL, it's just more entertaining. Like, this is a rule that is going to, yeah, like, they're trying to eliminate the touchbacks because they want fans to tune in for kickoffs, right? So let's make it let's force kickers to be good kickers. Let's force them to put returners in sticky situations. Like, if you have a kicker that can down it, like, put the ball down inside the 10-yard line and have it stay, like, put enough spin on it to where it stays outside of the end zone, that puts returners in a really shitty spot. And then the blocking aspect of it. If you have guys who are really, really good blocker, like good perimeter blockers, tight ends, wide receivers, thinner offensive linemen who maybe might, be a little more fluid athlete, or like a tweener lineman, and they can create some big holes. Those are the guys that benefit from this rule the most. And I think watching the XFL kickoffs and watching how they progressed and the entertainment factor of that was enough for the NFL to say, all right, fuck it, we're just going to do it. But I think, outside of McLaughlin, outside of Marvin Mims, someone who will benefit from this, I think, are a wide receiver and a tight end, Nate Adkins and Deshaun Vele. And Vele, like, we talked about this with
Exactly.
Ryan
Yeah.
Edwards, like, we're not going to spend too much time on it. But this is a guy who's got that Tim Patrick frame, that Tim Patrick ferocity when it comes to blocking. I think that this is just a really good opportunity for those guys to earn a spot on the roster. Even a guy like Audric Estime, like if he's not getting the snaps, or if he, they kind of want to ease him into the game, this would be an awesome way to get him some reps, get him out there, get his big ass out there blocking. But like guys like Lucas Kroll, Nate Adkins, even in Adam Troutman, like those guys can really benefit from this. Tremont Smith, I believe. Like these are guys that could really benefit from this new kickoff rule. And like I think, like I was trying to look up quickly the kickoff touchdowns from the last couple of years. And last year there were only 4 kickoffs returned for touchdowns, 8 punt return touchdowns, which is kind of crazy. I didn't really think about that. But the year before there were 6 kickoff return touchdowns and then 3 punt return touchdowns. So 12, they went up from 9 to 12 total touchdowns on special teams. I think that we could easily see double that this year, as long as the special teams coordinators are really dialed in. They're really, making great designs with these plays. And I know Sean Payton kind of talked about that with their special teams program, but man, this is going to be an awesome thing. And I cannot wait to see the fun plays that we get from the new kickoff rule.
You had mentioned an interesting name, Lucas Kroll, who, again, it's very early, but that was a guy who stood out during their first set of workouts, right? Like, could Lucas Kroll be the next kind of like big time pass catcher? And what does that mean? And what does that say about Greg Dulcich? So one of the questions that we had gotten on Twitter comes from Celtsy_boy. Appreciate you, Celtsy. Will Dulcich make it out of the preseason before having hamstring issue? This may sound troll, but given your body work experience, I'm genuinely curious if you think his body is just not capable of staying healthy at the NFL level. So in my expertise and basing it off of, one of the many things that I've seen in my 10-year career of working with athletes and being around my dad who did it for my entire life, when you have a nagging injury like this, like that just can't stay healthy and can't get right, and it keeps popping up again, to me, that tells me that there are other issues. There's something that is leading to the root cause of this hamstring issue, because they've done anything and everything that they can to try and satiate that hamstring injury. Clearly, it goes beyond the hamstring. Is his alignment right? Are all of his muscles firing? Is there something else that could be causing it? It's like, I wouldn't know unless he gets on my table and I have a chance to actually check him out. But that's what it strikes me as. And usually when you have these nagging injuries for guys where they just can't stay on the field and it's a soft tissue issue, more often than not, it's coming from the actual structure and the alignment of the body. And clearly there's something not right with his structure and alignment. Now, you have to hope that someone in that training room is able to locate it and understand what's going on and diagnose it and know how to fix it. But until then, it's like we have to base everything that we know and everything that we think about Dulcich on what has transpired so far. And what we've seen so far is, when he is on the field, he's a freak athlete. He's a very good pass catching tight end. But the problem is he can't stay on the field. So as we're talking about special teams and how it pertains to this team, Dulcich might be relegated to that just to stay on this team, because can you trust him to stay on the field? If you can, and you reach the point where you have a level of comfortability, then I think that he's your tight end 1 far and away. But the fact that a guy like Lucas Kroll is getting the kind of run that he is, and Dulcich again was off on the side. We don't really know exactly why. Is he still trying to recover from that soft tissue injury? We were only given so much. But Lucas Kroll is another one of those guys. Like, he strikes me as a guy that would be on kick return and probably on kick team. Is Greg Dulcich going to do that? Are you worried about putting him out there for extra snaps because of the fragility of his hamstring? So in this kind of situation, it's like, unless he gets this fixed and somebody actually targets the cause of what's going on with his hamstring, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Are they trying something new? And I guess only time will tell. But you, like, as a Bronco fan, you obviously want Greg Dulcich to remain healthy, but you can't have your trust in him so far based on what we've seen.
Yeah, and I think this was so interesting, and I actually saw an article over the weekend that kind of caught my eye and maybe has something to do with what's going on. But Packers wide receiver Christian Watson has been dealing with a nagging hamstring injury since before the combine when he was drafted.
Since he got
And
drafted.
yeah, and that was one of the big issues with him coming out. But this article that came out over the weekend said he visited the University of Wisconsin-Madison to work with researchers who study hamstring injuries in elite football players, hoping to determine the underlying cause of his recurrent injury issues. And what they learned was that much of his problem could be attributed to asymmetry in the strength of his legs. His right leg, the one that had the prolonged injuries, had a 20% difference in strength at the time, which can cause a whole list of issues, especially when a player isn't able to fully recover strength after an initial injury. So they worked through it. And then I believe they improved it by like 6 or 10%. Which is just phenomenal. And the NFL invested a whole bunch of money into the University of Wisconsin-Madison development program to help with this exact thing because of the rise of hamstring issues. So maybe this is part of the issue, because we've talked about this before, just you and I, where it's like, what is going on with that muscle? Like, why is it not firing the same? Maybe the load isn't the same. Maybe he's dealing with a bit of an imbalance in his hips, and maybe this is the issue. So it looks like we're kind of getting closer to being able to determine that those type of lingering injuries, which would be huge across the league, and especially for guys like Dulcich and Christian Watson, who have been dealing with these injuries for so long. But to your point, I think keeping Dulcich on the field, like he's a pretty good blocker. If you go back and watch his UCLA film, this is a guy who reverted from wide receiver to tight end, kind of more of a move tight end, but his downfield blocking is just like you would teach a wide receiver to do. He's very good with stock blocking. He uses his frame really, really well, keeps his hands inside, and he's able to drive. But man, when your hamstrings aren't firing the same, when you've been out of the game for so long, like that's a really tough thing, really tough ask for him. So if Lucas Kroll is the one who's getting these reps on offense and maybe on special teams, it's hard to see a place where Dulcich has a spot on this roster, especially with guys like Lil Jordan Humphrey, who has played kind of that hybrid tight end role for Sean Payton before, including last year, and Josh Reynolds and Deshaun Vele, all capable blockers, all big-bodied guys who, if a guy like Greg Dulcich isn't able to go, I'm sure Sean Payton has no issue saying, we can use LJ as a hybrid tight end. Vele can get some reps there. Like those are the opportunities that those guys are going to have. And that would be a bigger case for Sean to keep 6 or 7 wide receivers on this team and maybe just keep the tight ends at, Troutman, Adkins, and Kroll. I think that would probably be the worst case scenario. But like, you gotta, if you want to stay on the field and you want to get your reps and you want to be this big NFL player, you gotta stay healthy and you gotta stay on the field, man.
Yeah, the best ability is availability. Now, last question that I wanted to touch on here, we had Selena Carr ask us what our season projections were. So before we get to that, Pat, I know you had just tweeted out something about season projections for like what we're kind of expected for some of the teams. So I want you to run through that and we can kind of discuss, where we think they're right, where we think that they're wrong, and then at the very end, we'll kind of each give our season projections.
Yeah, so this is from Mike Clay over at at ESPN. And every year they do this projection system, the ESPN FPI and EPA projections each year. But Mike Clay, this is more for fantasy football, but it's still like a projection of their season outlook. And he had Bo Nix playing in 14 games, 304 completions, 489 attempts, just over 3,100 yards, 16 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. But Mario, the big number that stood out to me in Mike Clay's projections was 37 sacks for Bo Nix. This is a guy who took 12 sacks at Oregon over the last 2 years. This is a guy who had one of the lowest sack rates in NCAA football, as the least sacked quarterback in NCAA football in this draft class. And we're saying that he's gonna have 8 less sacks than Russell Wilson did. I don't know about that one, but
kudos, like 14 games.
Yeah, in 14 games. That's a little crazy. I rounded up my numbers
in my 3 sacks a game.
Yeah, in my tweet, I rounded up the number. It was like 2.67, but rounded up, it's 3 sacks a game. Like that's a lot. That's a lot, especially for Bo Nix. This is a guy who gets the ball out quick. And in a Sean Payton offense where it's all about timing and rhythm, you have a quarterback who's really good with timing and rhythm. Granted, it's a jump from NCAA to NFL. I don't see 37 sacks. I'm sorry, like 20. Yeah, I'll see 20 sacks. I'll give you 20 sacks. Just because there's a lot of things that can happen. But man, 37 sacks in 14 games. I don't know about that for for Bo Nix. For Russell Wilson, absolutely. Some other notables here, Mario. He had Javonte Williams with 180 carries, 712 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Jaleel McLaughlin getting 96 carries and 431 yards, 2 touchdowns. Cortland Sutton, 120 targets, 70 catches, 895 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Marvin Mims sees a jump from, I think he had 33 targets last year to 80 this year. And then, just Greg Dulcich, he has as the top targeted tight end, 46 targets, 29 catches, 328 yards, and 1 touchdown. Just doesn't have the offense getting really any better. I believe he has them ranked as 28th, the 28th best passing offense in the league, and then the 29th best rushing offense in the league. And then on the defensive side of the ball, he has Jonathan Cooper rounded up to about 7 sacks. Baron Browning rounded up to about 6 sacks, so 13 sacks between the two of them. And then combined 7 sacks from John Franklin Myers and Nick Bonito. Has Zach Allen with 5 sacks on the year. And then Patrick Surtain, Levi Wallace both rounded up to 2 interceptions on the season. Brandon Jones and PJ Locke, he has rounded up to 5 interceptions between the two of those players. The projections, his overall projections, he's projecting 5 wins on the year, which their strength of schedule ranking is 25th in the league. So 5 wins is around where guys like Chris Harris Jr. had the Broncos at. I had them at 8 wins, between 8 and 9 wins. But I don't know. I think this offense could be operating a little bit better than 28th in the league in passing, and probably a little bit better than 29th in the league, 29th in the league in rushing yards. The last note that I have here, Mario, is that he has Sam Mustipher as the starting center with Luke Wattenberg backing him up. Did Alex Forsythe die? Did he has he done something
on your boy,
to
Pat.
hurt? Not even having him. Listen, if you want to put Sam Mustipher as the starting center, fine, whatever. But having Luke Wattenberg as the backup when Alex Forsythe is still there, did we forget about this relationship? I don't know, man. That's just kind of crazy to me. But yeah, what do you think about these projections? And do you think that this is an accurate projection for the Broncos?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, no, it's obviously not accurate. I mean, the idea of saddling all 32 teams and every one of their players with statistics in May is absolutely absurd. And I don't want to call it clickbait because I think, there are things to it that are substantial and it's more of a guideline. Like you said, it's for fantasy purposes. So, you kind of take it with a grain of salt, but it kind of strikes me as a guy that doesn't really understand where this team is at and where they are coming from. We've talked about it ad nauseum on this show, a couple episodes ago when we ripped Russell Wilson, basically had a Russell Wilson roast, if you will. It was widely accepted that this was this was a top 10 offensive line in the league based on sheer production and advanced analytics. and they're returning everybody except their center. Like, how big of a role does Lloyd Cushenberry play? It's like, yeah, you might get a little bit of drop off at the center position, but I can't imagine that it's going to fall off a cliff. Everybody else is going to
Right.
be exactly the same. And the whole reason that you draft a Bo Nix, as we have also talked about ad nauseum, is he has better pocket presence. He's not bailing out of clean pockets the way that Russell Wilson was. He's going through his progressions, and he's a timing quarterback. Russell
Mhm.
Wilson is not. So just based on that simple fact alone, you assume that they're going to throw for more yards than they had projected.
Yeah.
The interception seems a little bit high, but I don't want to go too far down that road because at the end of the day, Bo Nix
Yeah.
still is a rookie
Yeah.
quarterback. But man, he didn't throw interceptions in college. He didn't throw interceptions at Oregon. Again, one of the reasons that Sean Payton was so high on him.
Yeah.
So, I mean, take that for what it is. I mean, it still remains to be seen if Cortland Sutton is going to be on this team by week one. It seems likely, and I assume that they would get a deal done. But again, as of this writing, we don't really know. He's holding out
He wants
for a
like
bit of an
2 to
extension, and I don't.
he wants like a $2 to $3 million boost, right? Not
He's
so much
he's
an
he's
extension,
not
but
really
more of a
asking.
restructure.
He's not even asking for that much, right? Yeah,
Right.
and then from the running game, I think this is going to be the most difficult thing to predict. Like we had said, I have a hard time believing that Javante is going to be on this team next year because you don't draft an Audric Estime where you do, and then sign a Blake Watson if you fully intend on extending Javante Williams. And we've seen it, Pat. Like running backs just really don't get extended unless they're in that top 10, top 7 echelon, right? Or
Mhm.
they're a very specific role player. I could see a situation where if Javante is fully back and healthy, and that's something that I'm going to pound into the ground with guys like him and guys like Baron Browning. This time last year, they're rehabbing. They're trying to get their body back to the point where they are able to play professional football. Right now, where they stand, like they are actually training. They are in a completely 180-degree difference from a
Mhm.
physical standpoint right now than they were at this time last year. So I mean, project that they're going to ride Javante until the wheels fall off. I think that
Yeah.
they accept that they're probably not bringing him back the following season. I don't think that there are a lot of situations that would even lend themselves to them bringing Javante back. And
Yeah.
so, if he's fully healthy and we can see glimpses of rookie year Javante, which I more anticipate. I know that the knee injury was devastating, and he clearly came back too soon last season. And you could tell, like there were glimpses, there were bursts where you're like, "There's the old Javante," but it was few and far between. So the
Mhm.
big outstanding question is he able to kind of recapture that form that he had? If he is, even if he's slightly below that, I think he could be on pace for potentially a 1,000-yard season just because I think that he's going to get a lot of volume carries. I don't think McLaughlin's going to take too many carries from him. P. Ryan is more of the blocker and pass catcher out of the backfield. Maybe estimate cuts into his carries a little bit, but like I keep saying, I think that they're going to ride him at least this year, get everything that they can out of him, and maybe boost his stock for, whatever team he ends up on in 2025. So I think that's a little bit on the low end. And then in terms of the defense, the only reason that Pat Surtain wouldn't have more than one or two interceptions is because teams are completely staying away from him, which could be. They did that last season. Teams just didn't want to go after Pat Surtain, which is why we have also pounded the table for a really good cornerback too, because you can't have a Pat
Yeah.
Surtain. It almost doesn't matter if your cornerback two is getting exposed routinely. Um, the safety projections, I think for PJ Locke, that's probably a safe bet. But with Jones, if Caden Stearns again can get back to starting form,
Yeah.
I see Caden starting over Brandon Jones, and he is
Really?
a much more productive safety in terms of ball, like being a ball hawk and being around the
Yeah.
ball. You can't replace Justin Simmons, but if you're looking for someone whose play is the most similar
Mhm.
of this group, it's Caden Stearns. Now, again, the injury is a big thing, and if he's able to recover and kind of get back, he's another guy that's shown glimpses. Like not quite on the level of Greg Dulcich because he's played more and he's been way more productive in the time that he has played. But that's the
Mhm.
thing. When Caden Stearns is on the field, he's one of the better safeties. And if he can, I see him probably signing a prove a deal after this year, hopefully in Denver. And once he can show that he's healthy and can stay healthy, I could see him getting a long-term deal because he has phenomenal ball skills. So
Yeah.
there are so many issues that I take with this. And then I had even commented on your post, like thinking that Browning and Cooper are going to combine for 13 sacks. I mean, obviously, I'm biased and I'm Baron Browning's biggest supporter, but he's at 255 right now. And again, just like Javante, he
Yeah,
is no longer recovering. He
yeah,
is in
he's in
training. And
training
like seeing his body now
mode.
compared to how it was last year, it's a night and day difference. And
Yeah.
what's crazy is when Barron finally did come back last season, Pat, he was immediately disruptive and he was immediately productive. You're going to get
Mhm.
that and prorate it for the entire season and tell me that Jonathan Cooper, who led the team in sacks last year, was, I think, a hair short of double digit sacks. Coupled with Barron, it's like their expectations should be that they're each double digit sack guys.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm very excited to see what Baron Browning, Jonathan Cooper, Nick Benito can do in this season, especially with Baron coming back and going from recovery mode and working his way in last season. And his performance last season while in recovery mode was still phenomenal. I mean, he made an instant impact.
Exceeded
The
expectations.
Kansas City game, like that was a clinic, and he was fantastic in that game. Um, I'm excited. Like until I see a full game, and this is the problem with projections. Like we can sit here and talk numbers all day. Like, yeah, I project that Bo Nix is going to throw for 6,000 yards this year. Like, okay, based on what? Like, we don't know
Yeah.
anything yet. I think like this is all just based on relative figures and math and all that stuff. Like you can project somebody's. I feel like football is one of those sports that's so much harder to project when you haven't really seen anything. Like baseball is one of those sports where you can look at a guy's like last 3 seasons and be like,
Much easier
okay, I
projections.
like
Yeah.
because that's just math. That's literally just math. Like, okay, this guy's been a consistent, 250 to 275 hitter. He's probably going to hit around 260, 265. Like that's
Somewhere in that range. Yeah.
yeah, like that's what we can say. For football, it's a little more difficult. Like I like even for a guy like Bo Nix, when he came to Oregon, and we've talked about that. But when he came to Oregon, I was like, okay, like I looked at his seasons at Auburn and I was like, okay, we're going to have like a 12 touchdown, 10 interception season from Bo Nix. Whoop-de freaking do. And then it just like blew it out of the water. And it was like, okay, like we can't really project anything until we actually see the product on the field. But I am excited for Barron. I'm excited for Jonathan. These are two guys that are going into contract years, so they're going to be playing their ass off. Really quick, going back to Bo Nix on these projections, I just wanted to say, like the 37 sacks, the 37 sack number, kind of wild, especially when you look at what he did last season at Oregon while he was under pressure. Yards per attempt while under pressure ranked second among the draft class quarterbacks last year. The only person who was better than him was Jaden Daniels. He was pressured on 14.8% of his dropbacks. That's the lowest in college football. His passer rating while being under pressure, the highest in college football, 145.4. And then let's see, his pressure to sack ratio ranked third in NCAA football at 7.9%. The only people that were better than him were Austin Reed and Taquan Robertson. So I think that Bo Nix, even going from the NCAA to NFL level of play, I think he's well equipped to handle pressure. I think he understands how to get the ball out quickly. And if his last season at Oregon taught us anything, it's that he understands how to operate an offense and notice pressure. So 37 sacks, again, I don't see that as a viable number. If we said 15 to 20, yeah, sure, that's fine. He's a rookie quarterback, but I just don't see that. That's why projections suck, man. Like I can't project shit with with no basis. Give me 1 or 2 preseason games and then let's have a conversation about it.
Exactly. And when it comes to like projecting this season, it all falls on Bo Nix. Are you going to get the Bo Nix? Is Sean Payton going to get the Bo Nix that he's talked up and made pretty much all of Broncos country believe in. Has he satiated the people who really wanted JJ McCarthy and they went with Bo Nix over JJ McCarthy? Those two are going to be forever intertwined, right? In the minds of Bronco fans, because the Broncos had a chance to go get JJ McCarthy. They liked Bo Nix better. And not only that, but Sean Payton went out of his way to let everybody know that he finessed the Minnesota Vikings into trading up for JJ McCarthy. So now he has that on his resume. So if you're projecting, and again, if you're
Wait,
watching this,
what did
you're
he do,
obviously a
Mario?
Broncos fan. You want to know realistically what?
What did he do? What did Sean Payton do to the Vikings?
He finessed him.
He finessed
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Patrick. This real dynamite drop in from my co-host there. No, it's completely dependent on Bo Nix and what his production is going to be. And again, if you're watching this and you're a Broncos fan and you want to know a realistic expectation to have, you just want him to look comfortable. You want him to look like he belongs. Get the expectation of like anything that CJ Stroud did, or even Anthony Richardson in the limited play time
Yeah.
that he got.
No.
CJ Stroud broke rookie records. I mean, he did things that most veteran guys were not doing. Like that cannot be your
'Cause he's a
benchmark. As long
dog.
as Bo Nix looks comfortable, like he is a dog. As long as Bo Nix looks comfortable in this offense and he's operating it and he's going through his reads and he doesn't look lost the way that like Bryce Young looked lost last year, that should be your
Oh,
measuring stick. And if
he
you get
doesn't
that out
deserve
of Bo
that.
Nix, okay, sorry,
Bryce didn't
he
deserve
was real,
that.
real bad.
Oh, he didn't deserve that,
Look,
dog.
listen, he
Come
wasn't in a great
on.
situation, but he looked out of place.
Yeah,
We can talk about
that
that
was
at a later
rough.
date. The point is, as long as he looks comfortable, as long as he
Yep.
looks like he has a hold of this offense, knows what the assignments are, knows where guys needs to be, then you should feel really good about it. If this
Yeah.
team wins 7, 8, 9 games, they miss the playoffs, they finish third in the division, I don't think that people should be dismayed by this because I think everybody understands like this is the rebuild. We are living it. They are finally committing to something that they should have done really since 2016. Okay. This
Yeah.
is it. And it sucks and it's hard to see. You saw a lot of fan favorites kind of cast off, and we have a completely new team and we have a team full of Sean Payton guys. So, really, what it boils down to is do you trust Sean Payton long term? I think
Mhm.
on the high end, this is an 8, 9 win team. Realistically, it's probably a 6 or 7 win team. But again, you can't put too much stock into that because Sean Payton took over last year. You want to have faith in him, and he needs to be able to get his guys into the building. And that is happening slowly but surely. And the
Yep.
number one caveat, again, is did you find your quarterback? You cannot compete in today's NFL, especially in the AFC, if you do not have a quarterback who can play at a high level. So as long as Bo Nix shows like you shouldn't have high expectations for him early on, but you want to see
Mhm.
progression. You want to see him better and better and better as time goes on. Honestly, a lot of like what you saw out of Jordan Love halfway through the season, people were writing off Jordan Love as a bust. They were telling you
Mhm.
that Jordan Love didn't belong in the NFL, and now he's considered what a top 5, top 10
Oh,
quarterback in the NFL with
I'd
one
say
of the
fringe
brightest
top 10.
futures. I'm just telling you where the optics are. Like
Yeah.
this is what people are considering Jordan Love to be. That's the kind of progression that you as a Bronco fan have to hope for with a Bo Nix. Expect the struggles, expect him to have a difficult time, but as
Mhm.
long as you see that growth as the season goes out, even in losses, even in games where maybe he didn't play well, it's like, did he play better than the last week? Did he have a couple of plays that showed glimpses of what he is capable of? That's kind of what you're looking forward to as it stands today. Now, if they get out there in training camp, Pat, and he looks like the second coming of John Elway, then all of a sudden the expectations change, right? But where we
Mm-mm.
stand today,
It
you
shouldn't.
just got to temper it a little bit.
They shouldn't change. Even if he performs well in camp, they really shouldn't change. I mean, there's a complete difference from, the going into camp and playing against your dudes and like, you know, like having success and balling out in camp, right? And then going into a game, it is completely different. Like I think that people have like you've been saying, people have this unrealistic expectation of quarterback, especially like rookie quarterbacks and then first round rookie quarterbacks. Like they got drafted in the first round. Oh, they should automatically be throwing for 4,000 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. Like, no, that's not how that works. There's struggles in the NFL. But I think the expectation that we should have for Bo Nix is that he just goes out there and executes. Let's just execute the offense. That was something that Russell Wilson, at times, like it looked like he was executing the offensive game plan,
and then do it consistently,
and
he couldn't do it
and
at a
then
high
just
level.
no, and it just like as the season went on, you saw it kind of deteriorate and deteriorate and deteriorate. But I think like your expectation of Bo Nix should not be John Elway. Stop putting these guys on a fucking pedestal. Like your expectation of Bo Nix should be for him to just be John Stockton. Just control the offense. You know, you don't have to put up gaudy numbers. Just execute your plays, get the short stuff going, drive your team down the field, and make sure that the run game and pass protection is on point. Because when that stuff comes together, that's when we start seeing big time performances. We know what he can do. Like we know what he can do in pressure situations. Go back and watch the regular season Washington game from last year and how he orchestrated those drives before the second half near the end of the game, the throws that he was making. Go back and watch their bowl game against North Carolina when he drove the team down the field, 92 yards and led them to a bowl game victory against a Mac Brown UNC team. Like this is a guy who is built for these types of situations. A matter of fact, go watch Auburn versus Oregon. Bo Nix, first college start versus Justin Herbert with the Oregon Ducks, and watch Bo Nix in that game. This is his first college football game that he's playing, and he drove this team down the field and won the game for them against a taunt Oregon team with a NFL caliber quarterback who was already established. This dude is built for this. All we need him to do is execute. Everybody is so focused on the big plays and the big throws. Oh, can he complete a 50-yard bomb downfield to Troy Franklin or Cortland Sutton or whoever? All I care about is, can he control the offense in between the sticks? Can he get first down after first down after first down and then get into the end zone? That's what the expectation should be. Let's bring it down a little bit, Broncos country, because he's a 24-year-old rookie, but he's smart as hell. Let him learn. Let him make mistakes. Let him have success. Let him learn. In a couple of seasons, let's talk about it. But right now, our expectation should just be he's going to be a point guard. He's going to be John Stockton. He's just going to throw that ball around. Slant God is back, baby. Cortland Sutton, get ready to learn slant.
Yeah, the biggest thing with Bo Nix, and we'll wrap on this, is he has the it factor. And it's something that we haven't seen in a quarterback that has been drafted by the Denver Broncos, maybe ever. Paxton Lynch didn't have it. Drew Lock didn't have it. Really, any quarterback that has started for them ever since Peyton Manning, they didn't have that it factor. You can't teach a clutch gene. You either have it as a quarterback or you don't. And it appears as though Bo Nix has it, but we won't know until the cleats actually hit the field. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure, again, you follow us on Twitter at Patrick Chiotti, at Vatanzi Therapy. Make sure you check out altitudeadjustmentshop.com. Any of the Bo Nix t-shirts, if you want like 20% off, use the code Bo Nix and show your support, and let Broncos country know that you believe. And make sure that you tune in next week when we will be live again with none other than Benjamin Albright. Love him, hate him. It doesn't really matter, because I know that you're interested in what he has to say. And the last thing that I'll say about that, Pat, if you want to come at Ben when he is on our show and you're in the comments section, you better come correct. If you can dish it, then you better make sure that you can take it. Mario Vatanzi, Patrick Chiotti, Altitude Adjustment. We love y'all. God bless.
Hey, feel I'm in the mood for a switch up. I hit the function, hit the rose till I hiccup.